In a recent video on the channel, we built this ITX gaming PC, but while I was installing Windows, it got me thinking. This system would hugely benefit from a lightweight version of Windows 10 or 11. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, lightweight in the sense that it's debloated. It doesn't include all of those programs and features that really bog down the OS. And well, believe it or not, it is actually possible and very easy to set up. This USB drive here is bootable media for a debloated Windows 11 install. I can plug this in any machine and experience a lightweight OS. And in this video, I'm gonna show you how to do it. Whether it's Windows 10, Windows 11, or even Windows XP, Microsoft loves to add bloat over time. We're talking features like Cortana, OneDrive, and yes, even Edge. None of these existed on XP, but you get the point. I would consider all of these bloat, although some will swear by them. And as it adds up, it can slowly eat into performance. It can crowd your workspace and occasionally drive you to violence. We'll fix that here though. And by the way, setting up a custom Windows install that allows you to pick and choose what to keep and what to omit is even detailed extensively on Microsoft's own website, so rest assured this isn't some dark sorcery. Let's not waste any time. All you'll need is a device with internet and a USB connection, and a blank 8 GB or larger flash drive with a compatible connector. To get started, click the link in this video's description labeled DEBLOATED Windows. You may have your own preferred site, but I've used this one several times without issue. Oh, and don't let the name scare you, it's just in German. Next, select your preferred language and keyboard settings. You'll notice that many of these prompts are identical to those within Windows upon first boot. That is by design. For processor architecture, you'll likely want Intel/AMD 64-bit. Then under setup settings, you can select things like bypass Windows 11 requirements, allow Windows 11 to be installed without an internet connection, etc. And most of these are pretty self-explanatory all the way down the page. I always check these first two boxes. I'll choose my own name for my machine and leave, quote, partition the disk interactively selected. If you select let Windows setup wipe, partition, and format your hard drive, you won't see this window here during installation where you traditionally select your boot drive and format. Just be mindful of this, especially if you have multiple drives connected at the same time during the install. Sometimes it'll install Windows on the wrong drive, and because you don't have a choice to change, you might want to leave this unselected. Under Windows Edition, select the one you want. Just be sure it matches the product key you intend to use with the PC in question. Speaking of, you'll probably need a product key, and OEM keys from our sponsor, VIP SCD Key, will definitely keep the cost down. See, retail keys are often $100 or more, which is a bit insane, but OEM keys sell for a fraction of it, the only downside being it'll lock to your combination of hardware at time of install. So say if you swap a motherboard or something down the line, you may need to reactivate. Still though, it should save you a ton of money. I've used VIP SCD Key for several years and in dozens of machines. Their payment process is super simple thanks to inclusions like PayPal, and you'll always have your keys in a matter of seconds. So be sure to click the link below if you haven't already and use our offer code SKGS at checkout for a sweet discount. Now back to our Schneegens website. If you already have a Windows key, you can enter it here for automated activation, or you can keep, quote, use a generic product key selected for manual activation later on. Either is perfectly fine. You can set up various accounts and password expirations. I tend to leave this stuff alone on Schneegens site, but feel free to tinker with it as you see fit. Disabling widgets is a pretty cool one, so this will turn off the annoying weather feature and news articles that pop up in your taskbar. These are normally things that you cannot manipulate within a typical Windows install. You can change the right-click menu to its classic layout. I know plenty of folks who hate the new one in Windows 11, so that's a definite click in my book. Let's delete preset icons, we'll hide the task view button, and have it open File Explorer when the This PC icon is selected. You can even disable things like Windows Defender and user account control, though I tend to leave these as they are. Honestly, Defender alone has saved me maybe once or twice, I won't lie. We can enable remote desktop, though this may not matter to you, and a big one, pay attention to this one, prevent Windows Update from rebooting your computer. Absolutely, this one's getting checked hands down. And check this one out, we can even make Edge uninstallable. This is normally prevented in Windows again, but not with our custom installer. Make sure Disable All is selected under Express Settings, and then take a moment to breathe by the time you make it to the Remove Bloatware section. This is a very, very important area for obvious reasons, so you can select the applications and features that you want removed from Windows entirely, and this is especially important, pay attention here. The ones that you are selecting are the ones you want removed from the install. You're not checking the ones you want to keep, you're checking the ones you want removed from Windows entirely. This includes things like OneDrive, Skype, 3D Viewer, Bing Search, Cortana, Outlook, Office, Mail and Calendar, etc. Weather is even in here, things like Note and WordPad, but I definitely would keep Notepad. Some of these can be installed after the fact, though you might have issues with the install since it wasn't already baked into the bootable media. Just keep this all in mind. Below that, you can customize your start menu depending on your version of Windows, though this tutorial will focus more on Windows 11, obviously. And that's about it. There are a few other options you may want to check toward the bottom of this list, but these are the core features I imagine will matter to most light and heavy PC users. Now, when you've double checked that things are set up the way that you prefer, you'll want to select the download.xml file button at the bottom of the page. Save this to your desktop or somewhere you can quickly access it without changing the name. It should read auto unattend. So of course, this is an XML file, sometimes referred to as an answer file, that dictates certain parameters to the Windows setup interface. There are obviously many things you can change within the standard setup procedure, like the one you're seeing here, but as you've just seen on the Schneegen's website, there are several additional features that can only be modified using an answer file like the one we've just generated. And that's the easy part. We've created a custom answer file, but the easier part, I got you there, is setting up Windows boot media much the same way you likely have in the past. So you'll want to click the link in the description if you haven't already, labeled Windows Media Creation Tool, which will take you to Microsoft's Windows 11 download page. Then select the Download Now option under the Create Windows 11 Installation Media heading. Save this to your desktop or somewhere you can quickly access it. Next, whip out your trusty flash drive and connect it to the same machine you used to create the unattend file. This should be the same machine you've been on the entire time. Then open up the Windows Creation Tool you just downloaded and run through the prompts as usual. Now, if this is foreign to you, don't sweat it. I've linked an older video of ours that will walk you through this setup process in more detail. Just make sure the USB flash drive option is selected, click through a few prompts, and allow the tool to do its thing. Note that this will completely format the drive and erase anything else on it. And by the time this wraps up, you should be left with a flash drive root directory that looks something like this, with a bunch of fancy files and folders that you do not want to touch. Instead, you'll want to simply add the auto unattend file from earlier to this location. Again, make sure it's in the root of the flash drive. And that is it. You now have a custom Windows installer set up with the parameters you dictated earlier thanks to the Schneegen site we used. Now you can see that all we had to do was add an auto unattend file. That answer file is going to tell Windows during the setup process what to omit based on your entries earlier. And now, to be clear, with respect to Schneegen specifically, there are many websites out there that do very similar things. You can even write your own from scratch if you're up for it. I'm merely recommending the one I've personally used several times here because it's the one with which I'm the most familiar. I feel, of course, the most comfortable using it for this tutorial. And I've not had a single issue to date. You can even open the generated XML file yourself if you feel the need to review things, so to speak, before installing Windows. Once you're ready to move on, all we've left to do is migrate the flash drive to the target system in question. So whichever PC needs Windows installed, you may have to direct the BIOS to boot into the drive if it isn't already at the top of the boot order. The setup environment should look familiar if you've installed Windows before, so when you load into the boot drive, you'll see the blue screen, probably the scrolly wheels or the rotating solid line. Only as you advance through the setup process, you'll notice that certain things are likely missing. So if you check the Cortana box earlier, for instance, you won't see a mention of it anywhere in this process. Same goes for diagnostic data if you disabled that, etc. Whatever you told it to remove in that answer file should no longer be here. And once we finally load into our desktop, we can fully verify this. Inspect the taskbar, start menu, system tray, and settings to make sure that there aren't any issues. Now, if you do notice that certain parameters haven't stuck, let's say you told it to remove Cortana, but it's still there, double check that your XML settings were correct. For example, if you selected the wrong version of Windows, your setup process may fail entirely, or you may notice again that certain programs exist that you told it to remove. It can be easy to misclick or mix up OS versions, but a quick reinstall shouldn't hurt anything. Just remake the answer file with the updated settings on the Schneegen site, or whichever one you prefer, drag and override it into the root of your bootable flash drive, and then repeat the Windows installation. DEBLOATED Windows is so much better than I ever thought possible. It's made me enjoy the operating system again. I thought I would never say that. After about Windows XP, I started slowly but surely hating Windows, but I don't really have much of an option as an avid gamer, PC gamer. Windows is by far the most popular operating system. You can't really game much on Linux. Mac OS is very limited in that sense as well. So even if I was able to like make a Hackintosh or something, it's just not viable for most gamers. But what's especially viable is a debloated Windows installation. And I can tell you that for gaming systems like this, you're not even going to notice that it stays snappy longer because again, those programs aren't going to be bogging it down, slowing down the startup process. When you first boot up your system, it should in theory boot up even faster because it's not having to load as many of those programs upon initial boot. So that's a plus. It's not going to feel as slow later on by the time you install other programs that you actually use. But perhaps the best thing about this entire process, as you just saw, setting up an answer file is very easy to do. And then once you have it, you simply have to drag it to the root of any bootable tool like this. And now I can take it anywhere. I can plug this into any machine and install debloated Windows the way that I want it, without the bloat, without the slowdowns, without useless, in my opinion, things like Cortana and OneDrive, especially if you have local backups or dedicated cloud backups. OneDrive's always trying to get you to buy storage and whatnot. It's very annoying, can interfere with file transfers and things. get rid of all of it, consider a debloated tool like this. I don't think you'll regret it. With that, if you found this video helpful, leaving a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing if you have not already. We're gonna upload more videos like this in the near future. And also consider leaving a comment down below. Maybe you found the process a bit too jarring. Maybe you wanna add or comment on something that you saw here in this process. Maybe another website like Schneegan's that is a bit better. Maybe the layout's a bit easier, more user-friendly. All of that would be greatly appreciated. I'll try to pin the most useful one up top and try to comment and engage with the ones that I find helpful as well, so that they'll show up higher in the comment queue. Again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.